Welcome down the warp pipe. In case you're new, I'm Ty. And if not, great to see you again. Ghostbusters is one of those franchises that I've loved since I was a kid. Whether it was the first two movies, watching them with my dad and my mom, or if it was just watching that not canon real Ghostbusters TV series, it's always been something I've really enjoyed and didn't really get a chance to play a lot of the games back in the day. This makes it such a shock that I didn't play the Ghostbusters game for the PS3 and Xbox 360 back in the day when it was released, and actually even more shocking that I didn't play it when it was re-released on the Xbox One and the PS4. So I figured what better time than the present with Ghostbusters Afterlife coming out to sit down and actually finally play through the game. But the question remains, should you play through Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters Remastered before watching Afterlife? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below, are you a fan of Ghostbusters and have you played this Ghostbusters game, either the remastered or the original? So the first thing to consider when deciding whether you want to play through Ghostbusters or Ghostbusters Remastered is actually the length of time it takes to complete. For me, it was about in between 5 and 6 hours, and that feels really comfortable and like it was squeezed in and not overextended at all. This means for most of us, it should be relatively easy to fit the game into our schedules before going and seeing Afterlife. But the other thing to consider here is the gameplay. Is it actually a fun game to play, and is it worth those 5 to 6 hours to beat through? Really, here is going to depend on your preference for third-person shooters that lack any cover system. But for me, it was an awesome throwback to the heyday of games like Max Payne 1 and 2, and really just getting my feet wet with a old-school third-person shooter. Now, you might be thinking third-person shooter with Ghostbusters is kind of an odd mix, but hear me out. It fits really well, and the developers at Saber did a fantastic job of putting in different elements and choosing different weapons that are both limited but fit the world and feel awesome in a traditional third-person shooter. So you have your usual proton pack with your usual capture stream. This is both used to damage enemies at a distance and also able to capture them and, bring them into the ghost traps. The creativity really gets going when you start to get the shotgun here, and you can actually use this to blow away enemies at close range that don't require to be captured. The other thing to keep in mind is that you do have a missile you can use on your regular stream, and you also have another variant of that with the shotgun. However, when you get to the slime hose, it's something that's a little bit different, and although it works great at clearing away the black slime, when you get around to getting this weapon and using it for, well, taking out some of the enemies, it can be a really big chore as they tend to fly around all over the place. However, the slime tether, which is the alternate fire instead of a missile for the slime hose, could have been used significantly better as it was primarily just for environmental puzzle solving and the odd enemy that you were supposed to have smash into a specific gate where a massive difficulty spike occurred. The repertoire, while small and condensed, both fits the universe and also feels great to use. So from a gameplay perspective, I can highly recommend it. Moving over to the story though, this is where things kind of get a little strange. You're effectively playing as a faceless, nameless character, even though they have a face, fiddling in the boots of a new Ghostbuster. It seems like a really interesting way of going about it, but without having any voice to the character, I feel like this could have been better story told if you just took over the controls of the actual Ghostbusters and, maybe had co-op to the game. That's the other thing to mention. This is a single player only story. And while you do have the rest of the Ghostbusters with you throughout most of the story, if not all of it, you more or less get to babysitting them and making sure that at least one of them is around in order to pick you up if you happen to go down, because things can get pretty hectic. Realistically though, this is mostly a fun romp through what you would expect out of a Ghostbusters movie, and having the full cast of the Ghostbusters do the voice acting and have their representation here is phenomenal. You have obviously Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, and last but not least, the dear departed Harold Ramis. Really, this is a great send-off and allows the Ghostbusters Afterlife movie to kind of pave its own path and not have to be tied down, and we get one last hurrah with the boys. So as mentioned, you get the usual Ghostbusters flair in here. There's great voice acting, funny moments, and realistically, you get some awesome set pieces. I'm not going to spoil everything here, but I have to say my favorite was early on with the Stay Puft Marshmallow. It was really fun hanging off of the building and having to blow away all the little, I guess, burnt marshmallow bits, although I do feel there was a lost opportunity to make a s'mores joke here. So in terms of the story and everything, if you are a Ghostbusters fan, specifically of the movies, I can highly recommend this as a great experience to play through, even if there are a few difficulty spikes that make things really annoying. Most notably, there's a section later on with a fence that you have to have some Cupid angels crash into by using the slime tether. This was where I died the most in the entire game. The other thing to keep in mind is that, yeah, you're probably going to die a few times because not having cover in a third-person shooter feels really weird nowadays. But like I said, it was a nice kind of throwback, and ultimately, I don't think a cover system would have worked in this. Although, I do wish that it was a co-op story. So this leads us to whether you should actually play through the game or not. And really, this is going to depend on how much a fan you are of Ghostbusters, as well as a couple other factors. So let me kind of give you a few scenarios here. For myself, I'd enjoyed the movies recently, maybe a few years back at a local theater with some friends. If you've seen them, I'd say in the last 10 years, the 5 to 6 hours would probably be better spent playing this game, as it's a new experience, and like I mentioned, the story and voice acting is on point and still holds up today. Although some of the cinematics are a little dated, as they didn't get a chance to remaster them if you happen to be playing the remastered version. So, scenario 2 here is going to be maybe that you're a fan of the Ghostbusters and haven't watched the films in a long time, or you just haven't seen any of the films ever before in your life. If that's the case, then as previously mentioned, you're probably better off spending that time to actually go back and watch the movies. However, if you do have access to the game, or you can get it on a good sale, and have the little bit of time that it requires, again 5 to 6 hours, to play through it on the normal difficulty, probably a little bit less if you happen to drop it down to easy, you can actually fit this in alongside them, and I would highly recommend it. Not only is it a fun game if you do enjoy third-person shooters, but like I mentioned, the voice acting and the actual story here is quite entertaining and gives you a good sort of additional thing in conjunction with watching the first and second Ghostbusters movie. However, if you're not a big fan of third-person shooters, then this is a little hard to recommend, or maybe you're just someone who really can't stand third-person shooters without a cover system. If that's the case, then, like I said, it's easy to pass this up and just watch Ghostbusters 1 and 2, especially if you haven't seen them, I'd say in the last decade or so, or if you've never seen them before. But if you have, or if you have that extra little bit of time, I'd highly recommend checking out Ghostbusters Remastered, or if you happen to have the old copy lying around and never got around to it, the original Ghostbusters game on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Make sure to hammer the like button to let both me and YouTube know if you enjoyed this one. There's a recommended video on the left and a playlist for all the shorts I upload on the right.